The Dancing Plague of 1518. In the scorching summer of July 1518, the city of Strasbourg was overtaken by an inexplicable and eerie frenzy. Imagine a bustling marketplace under the blazing sun, filled with the vibrant colors of traders and townsfolk. And then, in the midst of this ordinary scene, a bizarre spectacle unfolds. Scores of people, seemingly compelled by an unseen force, begin to dance. At first it might seem like a festive celebration, but the reality is far darker. On a makeshift stage set up in the busy horse market, the dancers leap and twirl to the relentless beat of pipes, drums, and horns. From afar, they could be mistaken for exuberant revelers, lost in the joy of a summer festival. However, a closer look reveals a far more disturbing reality. Their movements are jerky and uncoordinated, their faces contorted in grimaces of pain. Sweat soaks through their ragged clothes. Their eyes are vacant and glazed over. Some of them stumble, their feet raw and bleeding, yet they continue to dance as if driven by a force beyond their control. This is not a joyful celebration, but a manifestation of the dancing plague, a chilling episode that gripped Strasbourg during that midsummer month. Known as choreomania, this bizarre affliction saw hundreds of people dancing uncontrollably, and for many, the relentless movement led to exhaustion and, tragically, death. The dancing plague of 1518 stands out as the most severe and well-documented of over 10 such outbreaks that had plagued the Rhine and Moselle regions since the late 14th century. Contemporary chronicles and accounts of the time paint a vivid picture of this strange phenomenon. A 17th-century record by the Strasbourg jurist Johann Schilter preserves a poem from a now-lost manuscript that describes the scene. Many hundreds in Strasbourg began to dance and hop, women and men, in the public market, in alleys and streets, day and night, and many of them ate nothing until at last the sickness left them. This affliction was called Saint Vitus' dance. As the days wore on, the city's inhabitants could only watch in horror and helplessness as their friends and neighbors danced themselves into delirium and despair. The cause of this mass hysteria remained a mystery, leaving behind a chilling chapter in the history of Strasbourg, a haunting reminder of the mysterious ways in which human minds and bodies can be overwhelmed by forces beyond their understanding. Another chronicle from 1636 relates a less happy ending. In the year 1518 AD, there occurred among men a remarkable and terrible disease called Saint Vitus' dance, in which men in their madness began to dance day and night until finally they fell down unconscious and succumbed to death. 8 years after the dancing plague ravaged Strasbourg, the renowned physician and alchemist Paracelsus delved into the mystery of its origins. His findings, detailed in his work Opus Paramirum, along with other chronicles, reveal how this bizarre epidemic began with a single, seemingly inexplicable event. On July 14, 1518, Frau Troffea, a woman from Strasbourg, took to the narrow cobbled street outside her modest half-timbered house. There was no music, no festival, just an irresistible compulsion to dance. Despite her husband's desperate pleas for her to stop, she danced on, her movements growing more frenzied as the day turned to night. Eventually, she collapsed in sheer exhaustion, only to rise again the next morning, her swollen feet barely able to support her, and continued her relentless dance before hunger and thirst could even take hold. The spectacle drew a crowd of curious onlookers, hawkers, porters, beggars, pilgrims, priests and nuns, all captivated by the unnerving sight of Frau Troffea's unending dance. The mania gripped her for several days, and when it became clear that her condition was not improving, the authorities intervened. They sent her away in a wagon, 30 miles to the town of Saverne, where it was hoped that the shrine of Saint Vitus might provide a cure. But by then, the plague had begun to spread. Witnesses to Frau Troffea's strange performance started to mimic her movements, and soon, more than 30 people were caught up in the same manic dance. As the number of afflicted grew, the city's Privy Council found themselves in a state of panic. The clergy attributed the epidemic to the wrath of Saint Vitus, while the council turned to the Guild of Physicians for a solution. According to the prevailing humoral theory, the cause was overheated blood, and so the physicians recommended bleeding as a remedy. Yet, they also proposed a more unconventional treatment: to dance the affliction away. In an attempt to contain the madness, the authorities took drastic measures. They ordered carpenters and tanners to convert their guild halls into makeshift dance floors, and erected platforms in both the horse and grain markets. They hired dozens of musicians to play incessant drums, fiddles, pipes, and horns, and even brought in healthy dancers to lead and encourage the afflicted. The hope was that by creating an environment conducive to dancing, the plague would burn itself out. But the plan backfired spectacularly. Many spectators, swayed by the supernatural interpretation of the event, saw the frenzied dance as a sign of Saint Vitus' immense anger. Instead of calming the afflicted, the public displays only seemed to draw more people into the mania. According to the Imlan family chronicle, the plague rapidly spread, eventually seizing 400 citizens within a month. What began with a single woman's uncontrollable urge to dance spiraled into a full-blown epidemic, leaving a city in turmoil and historians baffled by one of history's most peculiar and tragic episodes. As the dancing plague continued to spread, the Privy Council of Strasbourg took drastic measures to curb the chaos. They ordered the dismantling of the makeshift stages that had been set up to accommodate the afflicted dancers, and enforced a citywide ban on almost all forms of dance and music until September. This was no minor inconvenience in a city where communal dancing was a cherished part of daily life. From the refined bassa danza performed by upright burghers to the energetic leaps of ale-soaked peasants, dance was woven into the cultural fabric of Strasbourg. Sebastian Brandt, a prominent Strasbourg chancellor and author of The Ship of Fools, 1494, outlined the narrow exceptions to the ban. He noted that while dancing was largely prohibited, honorable persons could still dance at weddings or first mass celebrations in their homes, provided they used stringed instruments only. Percussion instruments like tambourines and drums were to be avoided, presumably because they were thought to be more likely to incite the mania. In a bid to address the crisis, the council also ordered that the most severely afflicted be transported to the shrine of Saint Vitus, a 3-day journey away in Saverne. There, priests performed elaborate rituals in hopes of curing the afflicted. The dancers, still thrashing uncontrollably, were placed under a wooden carving of Saint Vitus, with small crosses and red shoes adorned with holy water and consecrated oil. The priests conducted the ritual amidst the thick smoke of incense and Latin prayers. This sacred treatment seemed to have a calming effect, and soon the number of suffering pilgrims dwindled to a trickle. By late August or early September, after over a month of terror, the dancing plague subsided. The final death toll remains uncertain, but with reports of up to 15 deaths a day, it could have numbered in the hundreds. But what caused this bizarre epidemic, if not divine wrath or overheated blood? Paracelsus, the famous physician and alchemist, offered a controversial theory. He speculated that Frau Trofia's incessant dancing was a deliberate act of defiance aimed at embarrassing her husband. According to Paracelsus, her performance was meant to be a deception to annoy him, with her dancing and singing serving as a means of distress. Once other women saw the effect, they too began to dance, driven by rebellious thoughts and a desire to irritate their husbands. Paracelsus categorized this kind of mania as chorea lasciva, a dance driven by voluptuous desires and a lack of respect. While Paracelsus deserves credit for attributing the cause of the disease to mental states rather than supernatural forces, his theories reflect a certain misogyny and seem somewhat far-fetched by today's standards. His classification of the plague as a form of chorea lasciva, alongside other forms like chorea imaginativa and chorea naturalis, paints a picture of a condition deeply entangled with the societal and psychological pressures of the time. In the end, the dancing plague remains one of history's most enigmatic and tragic episodes, a reminder of the complex interplay between culture, psychology, and human behavior. Several modern historians have explored the origins of the medieval dancing plagues, with one prominent theory linking them to ergot, a hallucinogenic mold that can grow on damp rye. Ergot poisoning, known as St. Anthony's fire, can cause severe twitching, jerking, and hallucinations. However, John Waller, in his insightful book A Time to Dance, A Time to Die, 2009, challenges this theory. While ergot can indeed induce convulsions and hallucinations, Waller argues that it also constricts blood flow to the extremities, making it unlikely that someone would be able to dance continuously for days. Waller's perspective is shaped by a deep understanding of the material, cultural, and spiritual milieu of 16th century Strasbourg. He opens his book with a thought-provoking quote from H.C. Erich Middelfort's A History of Madness in 16th Century Germany, 1999. Madnesses of the past are not petrified entities that can be plucked unchanged from their niches and placed under our modern microscopes. They appear, perhaps, more like jellyfish that collapse and dry up when they are removed from the ambient sea water. According to Waller, the conditions in Strasbourg were ripe for an outbreak of hysterical dancing. The city's troubled past provided a context. Every known dancing plague from 1374 up to 1518 had occurred in regions close to Strasbourg, along the western edge of the Holy Roman Empire. By 1518, the city was suffering under a convergence of calamities. A series of poor harvests, political instability, and the arrival of syphilis had compounded the general sense of despair and turmoil. In such an environment of intense suffering, the notion of dancing as a form of cathartic release took hold. The citizens, already on edge, were deeply susceptible to the belief in supernatural explanations. The pervasive fear of Saint Vitus's wrath became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Waller explains that the afflicted were drawn inward, overwhelmed by their fears and anxieties. The dancing itself was not merely a physical act, but a manifestation of their deepest psychological turmoil. In this context, the dancing plague emerges not just as a peculiar historical event, but as a dramatic illustration of how extreme social and psychological pressures can drive collective behavior. The combination of past precedents, dire living conditions, and a shared belief in supernatural retribution created a perfect storm for this extraordinary phenomenon. To better understand the dancing plague, it's useful to draw parallels with modern trance states observed in various cultures. Around the world, from Brazil to Madagascar to Kenya, people enter trance states both deliberately, during ceremonial rituals, and involuntarily, under extreme stress. In these trances, individuals often experience a diminished sense of pain and exhaustion, suggesting a powerful interplay between the mind and body. John Waller frames the dancing plague as a form of psychic contagion. He highlights its similarities to other mass psychological phenomena, such as the laughing epidemic that struck a region of Tanganyika, now Tanzania, in 1963. When a few girls at a mission school began laughing uncontrollably, their laughter quickly spread through the school, eventually involving two-thirds of the students. This outbreak of hysterical laughter then infected their families and entire villages, leading to hundreds of cases and lasting for about a week. Such episodes illustrate how intense emotional states can ripple through communities, igniting similar reactions in others. The dancing plague also bears resemblance to modern rave culture. While contemporary raves typically lack the bloody feet and desperate pleas of the 16th century dancers, the parallels are striking. Partygoers today might dance for days on end, fueled by stimulants and driven by an intense collective energy. In the throes of such experiences, they forego sleep and food, moving with varying degrees of grace and abandon. If a modern raver, perhaps under the influence of a particularly potent substance, were to find themselves on the horse market stage in Strasbourg centuries ago, they might not feel entirely out of place. In both historical and modern contexts, these trance-like states reveal how powerful the mind can be in shaping physical experiences, and how communal settings can amplify individual behaviors into widespread phenomena. This is where the tale ends. If you enjoyed this tale, and would like to hear from me again, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Until we meet again, goodbye.